Mm, 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 mm. LOL. Think we'll give it a little time. Couple mins. Listen to some music. Get caffeinated. Hey yo, Jay Killer. Hey buddy. What up? How's your Saturdays? Morning, morning. Wonder who this is? Ask a Ninja 97. Getting the toddler dressed. Ask a Ninja 97 knows what your struggle is like. Trust me. Oh, Miss Ninja. LOL. Everyday battle. That's right. That is right. Get a couple things situated, then we'll dive into a few things. I have a list. I did a poll on our community asking like um what kind of we wanted to go over. I put four options: beginner fitness mistakes to avoid, injury prevention, pros of training programs, which honestly, like, we'll probably go over that in today, like, anyways, realistically. Um, and then just other, that way, like, if you had anything. But I guess you could technically still ask away. Beginner fitness mistakes to avoid was the winner. So I have this kind of list that I wrote of things that I believe to be kind of beginner mistakes or things to avoid. Um, let's actually we'll turn the I don't know. We'll put the music right there. We're gonna keep the music playing. I don't know if the music's too loud. If the music is too loud in correlation to my voice, please let me know. Um, but I didn't want to just kind of go off of like the dome. So because that'll cause like a long rambling of ordeals. So I made me a nice list. That way we can stay on track and organized. If you have any questions, feel free. Feel free. Um, but we'll just kind of hang for a little bit. I put like I made like five kind of main um per se topics, not topics, but like points, bullet points that I kind of want to preface to some extent. Everything else obviously is like still important, but these five, in my opinion, from doing this for quite some time now, are what I find that beginners, whether you're you do it at home, or if you just go to an apartment gym, or you have a garage gym, or like whatever it may be, you just have like a set of dumbbells or something at your house. um, I think that these are kind of where people to some extent go kind of wrong. So I wanted to mainly go over those, and then I have like others on here too. But first, obviously, if you know me, how do the women do this? We caffeinate with Rain Storm grape flavor because grape is obviously the goated flavor of all time. I like rearranged the stream chat thing set up, and I think that I kind of like it like this. It looks pretty cool. Jay Killalay, we taking the toddler to the park today? I know someone that likes to go park swinging. I'm not gonna name drop, but I know a little toddler that thoroughly loves park swinging. So are you guys? Is anybody going park swinging today? I'm not going park swinging. I do have my juice though, as she would say. Juice. I have juice. And I have my Wawa, as she would also say. Oh, she heard me. She heard me. I had juice. I'm not gonna say the P word that's located in a freezer. I'm not gonna curse you that bad. Okay. We'll go through all of this stuff. And if we have time, we can just kind of chat about whatever you want. It doesn't really matter to me. We can go over some of this stuff a little bit more. I mainly just kind of want to go through these 5 things. In essence, the 5 things is form. I hate that tangent here. I hate that I need to put my monitor over here. That way the camera and the chat monitor is on the same page because I'm going to be doing this a lot. Anyways, form, utilizing some form of a program, like some type of plan. Compound lifts, so not utilizing compound lifts. Not doing full ranges of motion during movements, and then not taking recovery seriously. Those are kind of my personal like top 5. I see a lot. People don't really abide, not necessarily abide, but they just kind of neglect to some extent these kind of 5 metrics and really everything that's on this list. So let me pull this over here. Let's see. We'll start with some form. So you form during lifting is pretty important. It's it gives you the capability to kind of mediate it like injury, so it's really good for injury prevention. Just not like ego lifting or just like repping for the sake of repping or whatever. Proper form, like I said, it decreases the ability or the probability of acute injuries. So a lot of times whenever you go to the gym or you see somebody at the gym and they're just kind of like willy-nilly whatever, you'll end up getting, like elbow pain, low back pain, like all these different acute injuries that you then have to kind of like work around. So being able to understand that utilizing proper form is important with preventing injuries. Whenever you don't really utilize proper form in whatever exercise it is, bench press, bicep curls, deadlift, squat, all of them, there's a minimize muscle activation whenever you do the lift. So you're not able to really have that kind of like mind muscle connection, right? So if you sit and think, like, whenever, let's just hypothetically say we have a bicep curl and we're just kind of like half, like, just like really swinging it, doing some ego lifts, like we load the weight up and we're doing some ego lifts. You're really just moving the weight. Like, you'll get some form of adaptation, but if we take it and decrease the weight and really focus on the proper form of the lift, you can sit there and think and get that kind of, yeah, I'm flexing my bicep. You can get that kind of mind muscle connection to where you can really get the adaptations that you're trying to achieve, whether that's strength adaptations, hypertrophy, muscle size, all those different metrics. You can really have a kind of mind muscle connection to the muscle. Some things that kind of will play a role, that whenever you're at the gym or your garage or your park, wherever you're doing your lift or your exercise at, things that you can think about that will trigger or give you a red flag as to, I'm not doing this with good form. Obviously, ego lifting, so a mental thing, like you're wanting to constantly, you watch your biceps. Yeah. Not to get on this side note, but my old roommate from college, I don't know if he's here. The dude has massive biceps, and I personally like watching him do bicep curls too, because he's got huge biceps. And in a bro, non-weird way, I really like his biceps. I envy his biceps. Not gonna lie. They're really nice. LOL. Yeah, you too. Keck W. That's funny. I'm sure you do. I'm sure. I'm sure you do. Sorry, tangent. ADHD kicking in. Tangent. Um, Red flags. So ego lifting, right? So if you're sitting there and you're thinking like, this guy is, lifting whatever 300 pounds and I need to lift 305 pounds. The likelihood of you probably doing that with, okay, now he's here. We start talking about his biceps and he shows up. Of course he does. That's funny. LOL. Tangents. Well, look, we got to get back on track here, people. Goodness, y'all are distracting me from my professing. I'm a professor now. where was I? Oh, ego lifting. Yeah. So ego lifting, obviously, we're gonna have a breakdown of form. So we don't want to do that. Like that kind of falls into another one of these little things that I put in here about, comparison to other people. Like we really just want to think about ourself, essentially, as selfishly as it sounds. We don't necessarily want to sit there and compare ourselves to other people because that'll play into a lot of mental things whenever it comes to lifting. Your form will end up breaking down because we'll dive into, ego lifting and all that kind of stuff. Um, Another one is fatigue. So whenever you're sitting there doing your sets and your reps or whatever it may be, um, whenever you start to feel the fatigue kind of set in, and whenever I say fatigue, I mean like our bicep is like really burning, and in order for us to get this weight up, we're kind of having to like sway a little bit. We're not really concentrating and focusing on what the actual movement is in and of itself. That's going to be a red flag for decrease of form. um hey yo, hey McFarlane, I wonder who that is. Thank you. Welcome in. We're currently being distracted by Dustin's biceps because they're massive. If you want to go heavy, I would say it depends on what we're trying to PR. So whenever you go heavy and you want a PR, normally when you PR, so if people don't know what a PR is, that's a personal record, or a PB, a personal best. If you want to go for a PR in a lift, most of the time it's going to be a compound lift, which that's in here as well, not utilizing compound lifts. So it's going to be, like your bench press, your squat, your deadlift, your shoulder press, like a military press, things of that nature. I would put those at the beginning of your lift whenever you're fresh. You want to try to do it as fresh as possible. And if we're trying to hit a PR, your goal when you go into the lift is that mentally you want to think, I am going to hit a PR today, or I'm going to attempt. No, we're not even going to say attempt. You are going to hit a PR. We're going to put that into existence. You want to minimize the amount of volume that you do working up to your PR. For example, I went back home for Christmas a couple weeks ago, and we were doing deadlifts, and we were trying to go for like a 1 rep max, which would in of itself be a PR. Whenever I was working up to what I believe to be my PR, I just did 1, maybe 2 reps of 135, 225, 315, and then I started hitting my PR, or I started to attempt to work up to my PR. So we want to minimize the amount of volume that we have prior to the working set of the PR attempt, because you don't want to try to gas yourself out, but you do want to prep your nervous system, so your CNS system, to be ready for that load that you're going to put under your body. Does that make sense? You don't want to sit there and do like a set of whatever 12, and then another set of 12, and then another set of 12, working up to your heavy sets, and then try to do a PR, because at that time we already have 36 repetitions under our belt, as to where if we just did doubles, 2, 2, and 2, we would only have 6 repetitions, and we're still kind of in that fresh mode. Yeah, I mean, like, so whenever you go for PRs, it's not a every week thing. Like, we don't want to try to do a PR every week. I would recommend like maybe once a month try to hit a PR, or once every 6 weeks or something like that. That way you give yourself some time to kind of build up that strength that you have, and then you test to hit the PR, right? So like in the community in Cajun Fitness, there is a kind of strength building protocol, and it's a 4 week program of you consistently building up strength for those main lifts, right? So bench press, deadlift, squat, and shoulder press. And then at the end of those 4 weeks, you'll do another 1 rep max. So you'll see kind of where you've increased in those strength gains. It's not necessarily a matter of, I would say, you're doing it at the wrong time unless you're doing it every week. You need to give yourself some form of a gap between when you test what your 1 rep max is and then when you test again. Because if we're testing weekly or bi-weekly, we're really not giving the body enough time to make those kind of forms of adaptations. Does that make sense? Good question, though. I would say a lot of people try to lift heavy all the time, which is good. Like, it's good for your central nervous system, like your CNS system. It really lights up your nervous system. But whenever we're trying to increase like maximal strength, it's not really a good metric for you to be able to go off of. So I would recommend, if you're trying to increase your squat numbers, I would do some form. I have a program that's in here for strength building, and just run the program and forget about your PR. Like, just throw it out of the brain and just run some form of program that is for maximal strength. And then at that point, whenever you're done with that kind of protocol, then you can retest those numbers. That makes sense? We'll get to the protein question. I see the protein question. How often should you try for a new PR? I would recommend like somewhere in the 6 week range. Like every 6 weeks is probably a good. I would say like that's a good amount of time for you to increase strength adaptations. Um, Obviously, every individual is in and of itself going to be kind of different, right? Um, but six weeks, 4 to 6 weeks is a good metric for you to go based off of. That'll give your body enough time to kind of build some adaptations of strength for you to see some form of increase in strength. Protein question. What's the ideal protein intake for a woman? Well, I can give you a generic answer, or I can give you a precise answer. The generic answer is going to be kind of based off of what we're trying to do. If we're trying to go for weight loss, hypertrophy, or strength gains, um, you can classify it somewhere in the range of like 1.5 to 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight that you weigh. That's a blanket statement. That's a good range for you to have you know, some good protein intake. So like for me, um, I right now weigh about 170 pounds plus or minus. My protein is a little bit higher because I am a guy. So I would probably go somewhere in the like the 2 gram ish, 2 to 2.5 gram ish range. So I would sit kind of somewhere in, 150 to 175 plus or minus kind of protein intake. It's always better to have more than have less. Protein kind of will go into another one of these points that I have, which is like recovery. Because whenever you train or you work out or you're whatever it may be, whenever you're in a state where your body needs to rebuild itself, especially whenever it comes to muscles, there's a thing in the body called protein synthesis, which is kind of the healing factor of muscle fibers, plays a role in it. And in and of itself, the name protein synthesis, you need proteins to be able to maximize protein synthesis. So if you're not really intaking enough protein throughout the day, then protein synthesis is really negligible, right? So I would say to answer your question, a good blanket statement without really having to go into like the percentages, because if you wanted to get nerdy with it, you can go as far as calculating BMR and your total daily energy expenditure. And then once you get that number, which is going to be your daily caloric intake, then it would be a percentage base. And then you can calculate it based off of percentage base. You can break your macros, so proteins, fats, and carbs, down into a percentage of what your actual daily caloric intake is. But if you don't want to go through that process, you can just utilize a blanket kind of statement of 1.5 grams to 2 grams, somewhere in that way you have a range to kind of play with, of protein per kilogram, not pound, kilogram of body weight. So you have to take your body weight and divide it by 2.2. You'll have to do a little bit of math. Just a little bit, not a lot. Does that make sense? Is that a good answer for you? So going off of the PR, the second thing in the list that I have is not utilizing any compound lifts. So compound lifts are important. What I mean by compound lifts is any activity or exercise that involves numerous muscle groups. So that'll be your squat, your bench press, your deadlift, your shoulder press, any type of non-stationary movement. So plyometrics fall into quote compound lifts. Anything that utilizes that is a multi-joint. So what I mean by that, for an example, a bicep curl is going to be an isolation movement because it technically should only utilize the elbow in the exercise. Same thing with a tricep press down. It should only utilize the elbow. However, if you look at a bench press, the bench press is going to utilize the elbow and the shoulder. So any type of exercise that is multi-joint will be considered it'll fall under the realm of a compound lift. Compound lifts are important because it is one of the best ways to increase your strength gains. So it compound lifts utilizing multi-joint will allow you to generate more power and more strength because there's more muscle activation than there would be in an isolated movement. So you can train a little bit heavier. So like a bench press, you'll be able to increase more strength gains than you would with like a chest fly or something like that. The correlation of strength gains and hypertrophy gains are important. If you they're a relationship to each other. So if you don't have a strong muscle, you can't have a big muscle. If you don't have a big muscle, then it's hard to have a strong muscle too. So there's a correlation between. It's not a 1-to-1 ratio, but they do play together. So if you want to get bigger, you should utilize compound lifts because that'll increase your strength gains, to which you then can increase your hypertrophy gains. Compound lifts also play kind of a role in functional fitness, so to speak. So if you just look at daily activities throughout the day, not a lot of activities are going to be bicep curl or, chest fly or anything like that. A lot of activities are going to be squatting down and picking something up, bending over to pick something up, kind of like a deadlift, taking a box and putting it up on the shelf like a shoulder press. There's a lot of functional things in your daily life that are going to correlate with compound movements. I would say like a lot of people don't do compound lifts just because of some form of mental intimidation factor. So, like a deadlift looks kind of scary in and of itself, right? That you don't feel really safe, so to speak, by doing a deadlift. I said there was a my old roommate from college. He ended up deadlifting and he hurt his back, and there was a long stint of time where he did not do deadlifts because he had that kind of I don't want to say mental barrier, but it was just always like he always thought about like, oh, last time I deadlifted, I hurt my back. This is just one of many examples. But that kind of falls into play on one of the other things that I have on this lift, which also goes in mind with ego lifting, is that it, and I guess proper form too, you should start off and regress in all these lifts. You should do all compound lifts, but you should regress and make sure that we have the proper technique and the proper form, and then progress into heavier weights. You never just want to jump right into a heavy weight, because then that's where injuries come from and all that kind of stuff. So that'll kind of minimize the intimidation factor, just being able to mentally know that I know how to do this lift. And that goes for all exercises in and of itself. You know how to do this lift, so you're not scared of it anymore. So regressing and then progressing the weight is the safest way to be able to incorporate these compound movements into your workout. You can get a lot of benefits from utilizing compound lifts as well. Like I said, it is a multi-joint movement, so there is multiple muscle groups that come into play. So like the squat, right? Whenever we're doing the squat, it's working our quads, our adductors, our glutes, our hamstrings, our calves, our ankle mobility, our knee mobility, all those things come into a play whenever you're doing a back squat, as to where if we just did a leg extension or a seated leg curl, we're only working one muscle group. So it's a multi-muscle movement. So you get multiple adaptations, and there's some form of efficiency that comes into it as well, targeting multiple kind of muscle groups all in one exercise. Kind of a bang for your buck type ordeal. What else we got on my list? Not utilizing structured plans or programs. It's a good one. I used to do this. My roommate used to do this. Everyone's done this before. Not using kind of a program or a plan. Um, there's a lot of people that you see whenever you go and you lift or you go to the gym or wherever, and they just kind of sit there and they're like, what doesn't hurt today? That's what I'm going to train. Like, oh, my back's good, so I'm going to do back or whatever. Or they're just like, I'm going to do this row of machines, and they just do the row of machines. Whenever you don't utilize any form of program or plan, it's hard for you to make a goal that you want to achieve and then achieve the goal, because we don't have kind of a roadmap from point A to point B. Using a program for whatever adaptation you're trying to achieve, strength, hypertrophy, weight loss, toning, athletic development, power development, whatever it may be. If you have the goal in mind and you're at your starting position, but you have no means of getting there, then you're in and of itself you're not going to get there, right? So having a plan or a program increases the efficiency of how you do your lifts and how you do your exercises, because it'll give you kind of a structural breakdown of what you're doing, where you want to go. Utilizing a program also allows you to generate progressive overload as well. So one of the main factors that comes into making gains is you always hit some type of plateau. The body is an intriguing creature and will eventually over time get not complacent, but it'll learn what you're doing, and it'll adapt, and it'll become efficient at what you're doing if you're doing the same thing repetitively. So progressive overload, whether that's weekly undulation, daily undulation, if you're changing up your set and rep schemes, if you're increasing your weight, if you're doing myo reps, any type of change in the program week by week will shock your body, for a lack of better terms. It'll shock your body, and your body will say, oh, dang, I didn't see this coming. I need to adapt to be able to, do whatever activity this person's trying to do. Yeah, I love me some myo reps too. Myo reps will just absolutely destroy you. Especially whenever you do them on like legs, like some type of isolated movement. Myo reps is just a beast all in itself. It's crazy. Maybe we can dive into what myo reps is one of these days, because I love myo reps. I do myo reps all the time. But utilizing, like, in your roadmap, utilizing some type of change in what you're doing in the scheme will cause additional adaptations, because it shocks your body. So having a program will allow you, it's kind of like a calendar. It allows you to manipulate the things that you're doing to be able to get where you want to go, if that makes sense. Programs also allow you to plan out kind of what you want to do. It'll allow you to have balanced training. So we don't always want to do one specific means of training. There's a thing in the training realm called diminishing returns, which essentially means like, which kind of goes on what we were talking about with PRs and stuff. Once you finish your strength protocol, let's hypothetically say that you want to do hypertrophy and gain some muscle size. There's going to be a stint in time where your strength gains are going to have diminishing returns. But if you have a program that hits on your strength adaptations here and there, you'll be able to keep the majority of those strength gains that you kept. That's what, like, a lot of athletic development facilities and stuff like that do. They do like multiple what we call mesocycles, which a mesocycle is like a stint in time that you're working on this specific adaptation. So your 4 weeks of strength training, that is a mesocycle. Whenever you go into your next mesocycle, you might be trying to work on a different adaptation that you're wanting to achieve, muscle hypertrophy, so muscle size. But you don't want to lose out on all the strength gains that you built, so you end up incorporating just a drop here and a drop there of some form of strength protocol, right? Whether it's like 1 day a week you do, a strength movement or a strength like rep load to keep those adaptations. So you're able to kind of balance out your entire program in a sense by having a program. The lack of guidance of not having a program converted over to having a program will also decrease the likelihood of injury prevention. That way, we're not doing, like squat on Monday and then we're doing squat again on Wednesday because we want to. That's a lot of squatting motion, and there's an increase in a potential, muscle injury or joint injury or whatever. So by having a program, balanced out correctly, we can minimize and reduce the likelihood of generating some type of injury. Yeah. Yeah, at some point I would like to generate some form of like macro cycle. So there's macro cycle, we'll just touch here real quick. There's a macro cycle, there's a mesocycle, and then there's a micro cycle. So it would be 6 months is your macro cycle. 6 weeks is your mesocycle, and then each week in the 6 weeks is your macro cycle, your micro cycle. So macro, meso, micro. I would like to generate some form of long-term, roadmap or guide for you to be able to navigate kind of when, where, and how to progress depending upon, what you're trying to do. So yeah, to answer your question, yes. Yeah, it's just like the reality is that not every individual wants to only train for strength. Not every individual, with the exception of my old roommate, doesn't want to train for size or hypertrophy. Not every individual wants to or needs to train for, weight loss or cardiovascular fitness or whatever it may be. Um, so yes, there will in the future be long-term macro cycles of 6 months that will hit strength, hypertrophy, and cardiovascular fitness all in one program. But that'll be a very long program, just to let you know, because it's going to be like 6 months. Great question, though. I like that. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, everyone's different. Like I have it right now, I have it broken down into like week by week, right? So, like, if you do um, Swole Patrol or Strength Symphony or Thick Thighs Peachy Pies, whatever it may be, the you do have access to the full program, but each week um, or each day is broken down into like one section in and of itself. So it would be like, I can get y'all's opinion on that whenever we cross that bridge, but it would be, whether or not that would be logical or feasible to have that much in one classroom itself, right? All right. We only got a couple minutes here left. So I have two more quick points. You've been distracting me, which is good. I like the engagement. So not utilizing full range of motion and recovery are the last 2 points. Not utilizing full range of motion kind of falls into the same, to some aspect, of the of proper form. Whenever you don't utilize kind of full range of motion, it's hard for you to get the mind muscle activation. So it minimizes um, the the engagement of the muscle fibers that are in whatever muscle that you're trying to work. Whenever we look at hypertrophy in a broad spectrum, what we're trying to do is maximize the amount of tissue damage that we have. Um, if we don't go through a full range of motion, then it's hard for us to get that full muscle breakdown in order for us to repair it for the adaptations that we're trying to achieve. So in talking about a bicep curl, you're all the way up at the top, and you're going to want to go all the way down, completely lock out the arm, come all the way up, get a good squeeze, go all the way back down. None of the like half reps, partial reps. Those whenever we're looking and thinking about beginners and what we want to try to um, not do, um, there is a time and there is a place for partial repetitions, half repetitions, um, you know, in range repetitions, those type of things. But whenever we're starting fresh and starting new, we want to make sure that we learn how to move correctly. Once we learn how to move correctly in all the different movements, then at that point we can try to kind of not sway away, but incorporate different types of movement patterns and protocols to increase the amount of like shock that you give the body. But whenever you're starting off from the rip, the main thing that we need to learn how to do is move correctly. Because if we don't move the body correctly through space, then that's where injuries come from. And the main thing that we need to sway away from is injuries. So injury prevention. Going through full range of motion increases, mobility, flexibility, that all falls under the scope of, being able to move freely. The last thing that I had on here is kind of a big one. I should have put it at the beginning, but we're just kind of winging it at this point. Is recovery. So recovery is probably one of the most, like, it needs to be at the top of your list for sure. Like, all recovery and proper form and utilizing a program needs to be the top 3 things that are at your list. Whenever we rest, that is when you repair everything that you did during the lift. If we don't rest, then we don't repair. If we don't recover in the sense of proper sleep, proper nutrition, proper protein intake, those type of things, we don't give the body what it needs to be able to repair the damage that you have done. There's multiple different ways that you can, do recovery. You can do a full-on recovery day where you don't do any type of physical activity whatsoever, and you just take the day and you just chill and hang out with the homies and relax. You can do an active recovery, which an active recovery is going to be some type of low intensity. You want to tell my toddler I need a rest? Listen, toddler, she needs a rest day. Okay? Play with some toys and give some rest, okay? We need to take a break. That's funny. Yeah, I mean, like, technically, I feel like I should take the side of the toddler for specific reasons because I know who this toddler is. Technically, even though you're still running around with said toddler, it's still an active recovery day because you're not lifting any type of weight. You know what I mean? It's just, sorry, I got to take the toddler side. I feel like I'm obligated just because of who it is, Apologies, but not really. So passive recovery, completely taking a rest day, not doing any form of physical activity whatsoever. Active recovery, we can do active recovery, which is going to be kind of the toddler situation, where it's like a low intensity kind of day where we're not really doing any type of strenuous training or anything like that. It's just, you might go for a little jog, or you might go for a swim, or you might go play with your toddler. Something that promotes kind of blood flow, because whenever we do all of this training, we get like a buildup of what's called lactic acid in our muscles. So we kind of want to flush all that out. So we do it, like, I definitely recommend more so an active recovery day instead of a passive recovery day. And the active recovery day can be anything. It can be a deload week. So if you incorporate a deload week into the program, which essentially is like a week of your program, but the loads are cut in half. So if you're, bench pressing 225 for 5 repetitions, then on your deload week, you're still going to do bench press, and you're still going to do 5 repetitions, but instead of doing 225, you're just going to do half of it. So you'll do, whatever, 115, or somewhere in the 50% range, right? So we're just going to want to do like 50% of whatever we were doing. Sleep, we want to make, like, and I know that it's probably hard with a toddler and stuff, but sleep is definitely important. Any type of long-term sleep where we get a lot of deep sleep and REM sleep, and it's hard for you to be able to track that if you don't have a means of tracking it. Like, I have like a Whoop band, so I track my sleep, but a blanket statement would be to try, and I understand it's hard with a toddler, if you have a toddler or kids, or like a hard job, like a very demanding job or whatever. I know it's hard but to try to get at least 7 hours of sleep. If you can aim for 7 hours of sleep, then in the 7 hours of sleep, you'll get a good amount of recovery, both deep sleep and REM sleep. You'll get a good stint. And then there's also like tons of different metrics that come into play whenever you're talking about sleep, in the sense of, like how to optimize it. Which one of these days we could like get deep into it, but not today. And then nutritional recovery, psychological recovery. Nutritional recovery is definitely going to be, like I said, the protein intake whenever we're talking about, training and having all these like muscle fiber breakdowns. It's very important for you to make sure that we have the protein support to enhance protein synthesis. And like I said earlier, the blanket statement for protein intake, it is different based on individuals, but you can say that you can aim for 1.5 grams to 2 grams plus or minus per kilo that you weigh. I don't know what the calculation is for pounds on that, but that's just the way that I learned it. And then being able to, replenish all of your carbohydrates and your fats, and make sure that you're hydrating. Yeah, I mean, you can say one gram per pound is a good spot. Yeah. Yeah, because like if you, like, for me example, I'm around 170 plus or minus, so my range is 150 150 to 200. So if I did 1 gram per pound, that would be 175 grams, which is right in the middle. So that's, just a bit, let's make it easier for everybody. Let's go 1 gram per pound. So I don't know if you're still here, but we can use that metric instead. Ask a Ninja. Nice contribution. But making sure that, yes, protein is up. So 1 gram, we'll say 1 gram per pound is a good place to be. Make sure your carbs, so your carbohydrates, are restored, because whenever you train, you use an energy system of creatine phosphagen, the creatine phosphagen system, and you use glycolysis as well. The creatine phosphagen system is for that quick burst of energy. So the first 2 to 5 seconds, and then from 5 to like 30 seconds plus or minus, you're going to use the glycolysis, which uses glycogen that's in the blood. And in order for you to replace glycogen, we need to have some form of complex carb that we ingest that will be converted via specific systems in the body without going super in depth, like a Krebs cycle and glycolysis and all that kind of stuff. Transfers and transforms, for a lack of better terms, into glycogen, which then replenishes our energy expenditures. So making sure our carbs are nice and good, and then our fats are, nice and good as well. And then hydrate. Gotta hydrate. If we don't hydrate, get the electrolytes in, you just feel like crap if you're not hydrated. And then you can always, taking a rest day here and there is just good for the brain, just because it does become taxing on the body, and it manipulates all the hormonal responses and all that kind of stuff. So taking a day off is always good for the mentals. Other than that, I had other things on here as well, but this definitely took a lot longer than I expected it to. Which in future, this is Q&A numero uno. So, as we progress through these, we can, increase a little bit of time, discuss a little bit more. But I did have other metrics on here as far as, making sure that we focus on our stretching, our mobility, making sure our joints are all mobile, our muscles are all nice and long and plyo and all that kind of stuff. Neglecting your nutrition. We want to make sure that we're fed real well and we have the proper nutrition that we need, because if we don't have the proper nutrition, then at that point it just kind of becomes an avalanche of problems. That's where everything starts, is in what you eat. Setting unrealistic goals. So whenever we're talking about generating our program and our plan and where we're at and where we want to be needs to be something that we can achieve, and not some unrealistic kind of goal that would be difficult for us to achieve. And then not asking for any help was a big one on here, right? So if you don't know what you're doing, or you're on the fence about what you need to do, whether it's programming or form or nutritional guidance or anything like that, don't hesitate to ask for help. There's a lot of people in the community that definitely will give you tips and pointers and tricks and things like that will kind of help you in kind of navigating what it is that you're trying to do. So feel free to ask for help. And then I did have tracking progress on here, but that also plays into the whole generating a plan and a program, because on your program you want to be able to track the weights and the loads that you're doing. That way you can see the progress that you're making, and just tracking your stuff, seeing your progress and all that is just good for the brain. So that's the majority of my list. Before we wrap it up, do we or do we not have any questions? Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna try to. I'm gonna try. I'm gonna do. It'll be a bi-weekly Q&A, so every other week on a Saturday. It'll be in the calendar. So if you join the community, it'll be located in the calendar. So any event or Q&A or discussion or anything like that, you can find in the calendar in the community. So, but for these Q&As, it'll definitely be every other Saturday around the same time, 10:30 plus or minus. And as we progress, maybe we'll increase on time and all that kind of stuff. But that is all that I have for today. So hopefully you can incorporate these things into your training regimen, um, and see kind of how it'll help you progress. Um, as always, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the community thread. Um, I'm always there. I'm always, answering questions, hanging out on there. So feel free to ask. But besides that, I will catch you in the next one.